Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. I am Tina Jha. During his just concluded visit to Russia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the ACT Far East policy on Thursday to boost India's engagement with Russia's Far East region. He announced an unprecedented $1 billion line of credit for the development of Russia's Far East, asserting that New Delhi will walk shoulder to shoulder with Moscow to implement President Vladimir Putin's vision for developing the resource-rich region. While addressing the plenary session of the 5th Eastern Economic Forum as the chief guest, Prime Minister Modi expressed confidence that this step will add a new chapter in our economic diplomacy. In fact, he went on to add that the friendship between India and Russia was not restricted to governmental interactions in capital cities, but was all about people and close business relations. And in this context, he also expressed confidence that the Indian diaspora will make an active contribution towards the progress of Russia's Far East region. On this edition of The Big Picture, we'll talk about the significance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the Russian Far East region, the first by an Indian Prime Minister, the investment opportunities for India in Russia's less developed yet resource-rich Far East region, and how will it give a new impetus to the development of economic diplomacy between India and Russia. Joining me on the program are former Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, Arvind Gupta, Director, Vivekanand International Foundation, and Harsh V. Pant, Distinguished Fellow and Head of Strategic Studies, Observer Research Foundation. I welcome all of you on the program, gentlemen. Mr. Gupta, if I may like to begin the program with you. This, in fact, is the first region-specific line of credit that India has extended to any country. Previously, it has been extended to countries, but not region-specific. Help us understand how investing in India's Far East region, in Russia's Far East region, will benefit India.
As you yourself noted in your introductory remarks, Russia's Far East is resource rich.
Yes.
And in fact, its size is almost, I think, 3 to 4 times that of India. And its population is only about 6 to 7 million people. And that means 1 person per square kilometer. So it's a very sparsely populated region, but extremely rich in, in minerals and resources. Over the last about, say, 10-15 years, the Russian government has tried to develop these regions and has come out with very attractive policies so that the Russian economy gets a boost. In fact, the next big thing that will happen in Russia is through the development of these regions, and alongside this, there is also the northern regions, which is nearly the adjoining the Arctic region. So it's a similar region there. Now, this region is also located in the Indo-Pacific region, yes, or the North Pacific, adjoining Japan, which is a maritime neighbor, even US is a maritime neighbor, and then you have China and Mongolia and North Korea and Kazakhstan. So these are the regions. So this particular region has its own geostrategic significance. It's very large and it has huge resources.
Yes.
And this is also Russia is trying to use this region to improve its own standing in the what they call the Asia-Pacific region. And Asia-Pacific is a hugely strategic region. So now when India announces its engagement with this region, and specifically to this, one is that it brings the focus, very much needed focus, which has been missing in Indo-Russian relations, because we have been talking about Russia as a big country, which is too big in fact. So now I think we are discovering new parts of Russia. So that's why this ACT Far East, which is now a new concept in India's foreign policy, and resembles something like ACT East, or now we have another concept called Indo-Pacific. Then Russians have a concept of Eurasia.
So in a way, India has sort of expanded its ACT East to Far East.
Yes, it has. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, ACT Far East policy will give India a chance to play a bigger role in a region which is very strategic and also which is very useful for India, because it can source those resources. Indo-Russian trade, as you know, is languishing around 12, 13, 14 billion dollars, and nothing much has happened. But if we are able to invest in this region, develop this region, and get access to the resources, it will be hugely beneficial for Indian economy. and it will also give that maneuver, the space to India in that region. So I think that's why the region-specific policy.
Professor Pant, as Mr. Gupta pointed out, that this Far East region has vast reserves of natural resources, and of course the investment opportunities are too many for India as well. But at the moment, the opportunities, in fact, the engagements for India are very limited. So which are the areas, if we talk about largely where India can invest in, which are the areas in which India is looking to engage in the future?
I think there are range of areas where if you are looking at it, from the issue-specific domains, both in terms of basic like agriculture to more sophisticated like diamond processing, etc. So you have a range of issue areas where India can go in with its expertise. And I think the thing here is that you already have a dominance of China. So clearly the landscape at the moment is China dominated, and that's also something that has played into this Russian desire to diversify partnerships. And India becomes a very important player in that regard, because India brings in some as a rising emerging economy, and the kind of the kind of expertise that India brings in Russia's Far East will significantly help Russia balance, I think, its relations, its economic ties in a part of the in a part of its territory which is sparsely populated but strategically located. So clearly you have incentives, both geopolitical and geoeconomic, which are driving Russia towards pushing this, and this is something Russia has been trying to do. Eastern Economic Forum has become a platform which invites, which showcases Far East as an investment destination for Russia, and this has been going on since 2015, and India has been gradually escalating its engagement with this platform, resulting this year when Prime Minister was the chief guest, culminating this year when Prime Minister was the chief guest. So clearly India's engagement, India's interest in the region has grown, and Russia's interest in bringing India into that into that geography has grown, and I think that will result hopefully in some concrete opportunities for Indian investors. The line of credit notwithstanding, I think the line of credit will certainly help, but at the end of the day, Indian investors will have to make the most, because there are opportunities, and Russians are very keen to develop a very underdeveloped part of their territory, and that makes for an engagement which I think, as Ambassador Gupta pointed out, where economics should be driving this relationship. 21st century partnerships cannot be non-economic in nature, and this has been a problem with Indo-Russian relationship, that we talk a lot about our history and our strategic convergence, but economic dimension has been missing. So if you can bring this economic dimension into the mix, then I think the relationship really becomes a contemporary, very forward-looking relationship.
Ambassador, you agree? Because whenever we talk about India-Russia relations, it's mostly seen from the prism of military and civil nuclear cooperation. So now at this stage, by extending that economic cooperation in the Far East region, are we sort of expanding our ties with Russia, moving beyond the military and the civil nuclear to economy, trade, infrastructure, investment?
Indeed, I think this is one of those rare occasions when actually we are creating a new strategic partnership which is actually based on the economy, as Dr. Pant said, and not on military. Though there is the chance of some naval collaboration in making ships in the port of Vladivostok. Having said that, I think, as Dr. Gupta said, our trade has been languishing. But if you look at the last 2 or 3 years, it is the cross investments which have actually picked up, and we have already reached the target that we had set for 2025. So I think today you will see in the first flush more Indian investment in the Russian Far East, which hopefully will lead to more trade. Now, second, I think it's a very carefully crafted strategy to diversify and deepen our energy security. So we have, because you see in the Gulf there is uncertainty, and some of our suppliers like Venezuela and Libya have had their own domestic problems. So we need to diversify. We have invested in the past in Siberia, but I think now this is going a big way forward, and both ONGC Videsh and I think Indian Oil are going to have massive investments. This also shows a slight more risk-taking appetite. Earlier we were investing in oil-bearing oil fields. I think now we are ready to go into, particularly in gas, into exploration. and share the risk and then hopefully get supplies. So I think it is a very carefully crafted visit. You look at the preparation, the Commerce Minister and 4 Chief Ministers and a large business delegation.
Yes, and about 50 agreements were signed as well.
So I think what we are trying to show there is that India Inc. is ready to do business with the Russian Far East. And I think that is a factor which, without saying so, is a challenge to China. And Dr. Pant pointed out that the Chinese were there in the Russian Far East in large numbers. So the Russians also need some diversification. So India, Japan, Mongolia, South Korea are all part of this game. And I think India has taken very bold steps, particularly on this visit. And I think I must compliment the government for having thought this out and at least shown intent to A, re-quantify the India-Russia relationship, and B, show that economics can be in command rather than merely the technology relationship so far.
Dr. Gupta, because both you and the ambassador pointed out about how our trade has been languishing at a meager $11 billion, but the target is ambitious. We aim to reach $30 billion by 2025. Isn't it a huge challenge? Because in just about 6 years, you aim to reach an amount which is almost 3 times the number of the present amount, the present trade amount. How do we aim to achieve it?
Yes, indeed. I think it is a very big challenge and it's not going to be easy. We have set such targets before also and not met. But there are some structural problems in Indo-Russian relations and economic and trade relations, and that we have to overcome. But if this is a new area, now like for instance, there was one announcement that there would be a shipping line between Vladivostok and Chennai.
Yes.
Now, if that works out, and I think the government should ensure that this works out, then you can get access to all the resources which are there. So there's an outlet. We have already have an experience of the working in the sourcing oil from the Sakhalin field for the last 2 decades, in fact, and that has worked very nicely. So if the region opens up, investments increase, and India Inc. shows some appetite for risk and some animal spirits, then perhaps this trade target can be achieved. I don't think it's very difficult, because we need all the resources which are there. We are ourselves short of it. We are a growing economy. Where are we going to get resources from? If we are getting resources today, say coal for instance, we are getting from Australia. Why can't we get it from the Far East? We already have Tata Power, which has invested in a coal mine in the Far East, except that we now should scale up. So question is of scale up. A few Indian companies have been there for some time, but we have to scale up. And we have to overcome this hesitation that has been there in India Inc. To invest there. And now with Prime Minister having taken the lead and India having come up with a very well-crafted policy, as Ambassador Gurjeet was saying, then I think it's really now for the private sector to pick up the thread and just go and
Ambassador, another aspect that was discussed between the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin was the skilled manpower, export of manpower from India. All of us know India has an enormous demographic dividend. We have skilled laborers, reliable workers, so to say. But how will we work towards it? Because settling them in an hostile climate, and of course there will be a lot of barriers, for example language, the rules and regulations, the rule of law in the country. How will those things be worked out?
Yeah, before I come to that, I just want to compliment what Dr. Gupta said.
Sure.
You know, one of the reasons why Vladivostok and this region is today more attractive is actually because of climate change. With the climate change and the melting of the polar ice caps, these seas are becoming less icy and more navigable. So therefore, whatever investment you make in the Russian Far East, its evacuation today is far easier. Vladivostok today is a much easier port to operate than 15 years ago when we first opened a consulate there. Secondly, from Vladivostok, you can actually have an Arctic route to Europe through the seas, which earlier was closed. An unfortunate fact that the ice is melting, but there is an opportunity over there. This leads to the fact that we can invest more, particularly in heavy resources like oil, gas and coal. Now, your question about skilled manpower. So, skilled manpower is one of India's assets.
Yes.
So far, we have looked at skilled manpower only as IT, but actually they are the diamond polishers, they are the precious stone cutters, and there are many others, including in setting up infrastructure projects like we have done in the Gulf. Now, these kind of people, with the boom which we expect in the Russian Far East, whether it's Japanese or Korean, I think Indian labor and skilled people will have many opportunities, even in our own projects. Plus, traditional items like diamonds or precious stones, they need special skills. That I think the target would be to go there and extract them, do some essential processing, and then export them, not the raw. That gives incentive to the Russians that, see, we are doing a little bit of made in Russia for you over there. And then, of course, the large amount of credit that is being offered. I think that we should discuss further.
Professor Pant, coming back to the strategic point of view of the Far East region and the benefits it has for India, of course, it's a resource-rich region, huge potential in strengthening India-Russia relations. But the fact is, in recent years, we've seen this Asia-Pacific approach of Russia. So, in that context, how does India align itself? Because India is working towards its Indo-Pacific policy, and then how do you align yourself with Russia's Asia-Pacific approach that has, that has only been seen in recent years?
Well, see, there is no doubt that there are differences on this issue, and I think if you carefully read the document, it mentions it doesn't mention Indo-Pacific. It mentions Indian and Pacific Oceans and how the two countries can work in that broader geography. It doesn't use the term Indo-Pacific because I think Russians have their own reservations about it for various reasons. But India, of course, has articulated a position on Indo-Pacific. Whether you look at Mr. Modi's speech in Shangri-La or elsewhere, which is also quite different from the American version of this policy. So clearly, I think in the long term, I don't think there will be complete convergence on this issue. But certainly there are opportunities for both, because when you say when you look at Far East, it is directly impinging on the Indo-Pacific geography. So clearly for Russia, it's one thing to say we don't buy the Indo-Pacific construct, but in operational terms, in practical terms, you have to look at the region the way it is.
Yes.
And if you want to develop the Far East, there is a reason why Russians are trying to bring in Asian powers in the Far East, because that is an underdeveloped area that is linked to the larger Asian landmass, and that's something that they want to they want diversification of their partners. So clearly, in operational terms, it doesn't really matter whether we think of it in Indo-Pacific terms or Asia-Pacific terms as far as Russians are concerned. I think the broader convergence lies in what do we want out of these constructs, and how can we together look at the region in a way that benefits both of us. So rather than getting fixated on this idea that, look, you are Asia Pacific, we look at it as Indo-Pacific, and nothing gets done, you work out modalities around which you can find practical solutions to problems. Now clearly there is a practical problem for Russia in trying to develop their Far East. What can India do? It doesn't matter whether India says it's Indo-Pacific or they say it's Asia Pacific. There is a clear recognition of the complementarities between the two countries, and I think that's the way it should be. And I think if you see this visit, that's exactly what has happened. This is Ambassador Singh very, very clearly mentioned how it seems very strategic, and I think that is something which you get out of this visit, that there is a plan now, a plan of action, which is more about operationalizing certain ideas that we have had about Indo-Russian partnership, not simply in the air, but what can we do on the ground in real terms. And so whether we want to engage with Russia in areas where we have not gone before, or whether we have been gone there gingerly, or do we look at the economic side of this engagement, the point that we discussed earlier, and try to give it a boost. So I think beyond the discursive element of Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific, both the countries have realized that it's important to move beyond that.
Yes.
And for policymakers, that's the most important thing in operational terms.
So that it's time to move beyond that buyer-supply relationship that we've had with Russia. So, Dr. Gupta, but the challenges, of course, as we were discussing, are immense. Will the sanctions on Russia in any way impact the economic partnership that we are trying to build with Russia?
I don't think sanctions will have much role here, because the Indian and the Russian side, they are already discussing many of these projects. These are essentially non-strategic in nature. They are mostly economic. Should not be any problem posed by the sanctions.
Okay, and because we've discussed also the sea route between Vladivostok and Chennai, do you in any way see, because it will have a trilateral kind of relationship, Vietnam comes into picture, will it have any kind of repercussion with China? Will India have to play another balancing act when it comes to maintaining relations with China?
So, as I said, if India's investment in the region increases, it will lead to enhanced Indian profile in the region, in a very hugely strategic region, apart from giving us the benefits, that economic benefits that we'll get. So I think it's a win-win for us. Once you do that and you get going and there are some successful projects, then I think everybody, including China, Japan, Vietnam, everybody, even ASEAN, they will look at India very positively. So I think it's a great move by the government of India, which has both bilateral benefits and also geostrategic benefits. I just want to add, the joint statement was mentioned. It talks about linking up Asia Pacific with Eurasia. And Eurasia means it goes all, because Russia is very big, so it also calls itself as a Eurasian power, so it includes Central Asia and other. So it's also, you can link up north-south corridor that we are trying to build through Iran with the, the river routes that we have in Russia, and that can give you access to the Arctic. So there is an alternative route, and it is possible that because the north-south corridor is already going into Russia. So all that you have to do is, they have all these river waters, this kind of a linking, but we have to simply find how to do that. So I think that could be looked at, and so that the rivers which are available, and there's huge rivers, big rivers, and under climate change, if they are melting, probably those things would be available. So you would be able to send your goods through the north-south corridor into Russia, and from Russia then it can go to either to the Arctic or to this Far East.
Ambassador?
Agree with him, but on the sanctions, I'm a little more anxious. You see, you can invest in a country and perhaps the sanctions will have no role. But when you have a large credit line, which is supposedly dollar based, we don't know the details, to any banking system in India has dollar exposures. How will that banking system deal with the country under sanctions? It's something I am not clear about.
Okay.
Secondly, in the past, there has been a line of credit given from bank to bank, from India to Russia. It was never utilized because of the interest rate being a bone of contention. So, this credit which we are on, the moment we say line of credit, we think of a government to government thing. But my impression is this is not a government to government thing, because this was not announced in the bilateral visit. It was announced in the forum. So to my mind, this is actually a support to private investment, whether by PSUs or by private sector. And therefore, perhaps it will not see government guarantees. Okay. So therefore, does it remain a credit line which is government owned, or is it a commercial credit line? I think that clarity will need to come, and the appropriate interest rates will need to make it attractive for Indian companies to use it. Yes, sanctions to my mind remains a question mark, but I'm sure before announcing it, somebody has thought this out.
Dr.
And
Pant,
by
would
and
you like
by
to
we will know.
respond to his query?
No, I think I would be, a bit concerned about the impact of sanctions, and given, there are different areas of the sanctions regime, and clearly the strategic one has been the focus as far as the Americans are concerned. But indirectly, the banking system, the global financial system will be under pressure because that's the route that we would be using in a lot of these cases. So my sense is that there can be some pressures out there as far as sanctions are concerned. But look, we are also living in very fluid times. I mean, Mr. Trump is saying to G7, let's get back Russia next year when he'll have G7. Apparently, he might invite Russians themselves. So there might be complete change in perspective very soon on Russia. And given the way the fluidity of the international order is evolving, perhaps this is an opportunity for all countries as they look at reevaluating their options vis-a-vis other major powers.
All right. So making economic partnership a strong pillar of bilateral relationship is certainly a key priority for both India and Russia at the moment. And how it pans out in the future is certainly something that we'll have to watch out for. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture and sharing your perspective with us. You can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter and share your feedback about our program. Thank you very much for your time.